Every year, millions of people around the world fall into a trap few ever escape. We're not just talking about addiction, we're talking about substances so destructive they disfigure bodies, erase memories, and even turn animals into addicts. Today we will travel through 12 countries. 12 drugs that have left trails of devastation documented by journalists, doctors, and survivors. This is not glorification. This is the reality that many prefer not to see. On the margins of Buenos Aires exists a substance that users themselves call the cheap death. Paco is the most toxic byproduct of the cocaine manufacturing process, base paste mixed with kerosene, sulfuric acid, and whatever solvent is available. Its price, less than $1. Its effect, it lasts barely 10 seconds. That's what makes it most terrifying. The flash is so short and so intense that the brain enters a compulsive loop. Argentine doctors documented cases of teenagers who went from first use to living on the streets in less than 3 weeks. Paco doesn't generate prolonged euphoria. It generates a void so deep that the only possible thought is getting the next dose. Forensic doctors in Argentina describe it as crack amplified with industrial poison. Recovery rates are among the lowest in the world. If Argentina's Paco is brutal, its Brazilian cousin surpasses it. Oxy, short for oxidized, was born in the Amazonian states of Brazil as an even cheaper alternative to crack. Its ingredients, cocaine base paste, gasoline, quicklime, and sometimes potassium permanganate, the same chemical used to disinfect water. What makes Oxy particularly devastating is not just its toxicity, it's its speed. Researchers at the University of São Paulo documented that physical addiction can develop after the first or second use. Physical deterioration is visible within weeks. Users lose weight dramatically, develop severe neurological damage, and life expectancy after starting use is measured in months, not years. In Amazon communities, Oxy reached areas where crack had never penetrated, as if the jungle needed its own kind of hell. In 1938, German laboratories launched an over-the-counter pill called Pervitin. It was pure methamphetamine. Nazi soldiers consumed it by the millions to march without sleeping, without feeling fear, without stopping. Decades later, in the Czech Republic, the tradition didn't disappear. Czechs known as varnici. Cooks learned to manufacture methamphetamine using pseudoephedrine extracted from cough medicines, in domestic kitchens. Unlike industrial American meth, Czech Pervitin is artisanal and its purity is unpredictable, making it especially dangerous. What is most unsettling is its cultural entrenchment. In certain industrial regions of the country, there are families spanning 3 generations who have manufactured and consumed the same substance. Europe ignored it for decades. Today, Czechia has one of the oldest and most deeply rooted methamphetamine problems on the continent. Few episodes in the history of drugs are as disturbing as Japan's. When World War II ended, Japanese military warehouses contained millions of vials of Hirapan, injectable methamphetamine that had been given to pilots, soldiers, and weapons factory workers to keep them operational without sleep. With the war over, the government simply released the stockpile onto the civilian market. Pharmaceutical companies sold it in stores with the slogan "Eliminates fatigue, increases vitality." By 1954, Japan had more than 2 million addicts. It was the first major methamphetamine epidemic in modern history. The government responded with one of the harshest crackdowns in the world. Japan today has penalties of up to 10 years for simple possession of meth. But the irony still resonates: the same nation that criminalized the drug most harshly was the first to distribute it on a massive scale. Originally from Russia, where it left a documented trail of horror in the 2000s, crocodile homemade desomorphine is emerging in India among populations with no access to heroin or in extreme poverty. Its name comes from what it does to the skin: it turns it scaly, green, and necrotic. Like a crocodile. It is made from codeine extracted from cough medicines mixed with gasoline, paint, match heads, and hydrochloric acid. The result is an opioid between 3 and 5 times more potent than morphine. The problem: solvents that are not properly removed are injected directly into the body. The skin becomes infected, tissue dies, and bones are exposed. Doctors who have treated cases in Russia described scenes that seem like horror movies. Life expectancy after developing addiction, between 1 and 3 years. That it is now emerging in India, the world's second most populous country, is a warning sign that few are paying attention to. On the streets of Manchester or Birmingham, it is possible to find something that looks like it came out of a science fiction film, people completely motionless, bent at 90 degrees, with their eyes open. They are not dead. They are under the effects of spice. Spice, also known as K2, is a synthetic cannabinoid. In theory, it was designed in laboratories to mimic the THC in cannabis. In practice, it can be hundreds of times more potent and completely unpredictable. Why did it spread so widely in the United Kingdom? Because for years it was legal. It was sold in convenience stores as herbal incense. By the time it was banned, it was already too late. British prisons have a serious problem. Spice can be soaked into letters or drawings, making it virtually undetectable. Emergency services in cities like Manchester reported that up to 40% of their ambulance calls in certain areas were related to spice. The most terrifying part: every batch can have a different chemical composition. You never know exactly what you are consuming. South Africa has one of the highest HIV rates in the world, and someone found a way to turn that into criminal profit. Hunga, also known as naope, is a mixture of low-grade heroin, cannabis, baking soda, and, according to multiple laboratory analyses, antiretroviral ARV drugs, the medications that keep HIV patients alive. The most perverse consequence: users steal their own medications, or those of sick family members, to sell them to Hunga distributors. Doctors in Durban documented the following paradox: HIV patients who interrupt their treatment because their medications were stolen to manufacture the very drug they themselves consume. Addiction is extremely rapid. Withdrawal symptoms are described by users as feeling like your bones are breaking from the inside. In the townships of KwaZulu-Natal, Hunga destroyed entire communities. Families who lost 2 and 3 children to the same substance. Afghanistan produces between 80 and 90% of the world's opium. It is not an abstract statistic. It is something you can see, smell, and breathe in every corner of the country. In the cities, rivers of addicts live under the bridges of the Kabul River. Children who have never been to school but have known the smell of opium since they were born. There is a practice documented by humanitarian organizations that is almost incomprehensible: mothers in extreme poverty who give their babies Shyrick diluted opium to stop them crying when there is no food. An entire generation born with physical dependency. But there is a phenomenon that better summarizes the level of opium saturation in that country than any other image: stray dogs have become addicted. In rural farming areas, dogs ingest the residue from the harvest and the processing. They lick the ground of fields after collection. They actively seek out the waste from clandestine laboratories. Veterinary organizations that have worked in the region report dogs displaying compulsive behavior identical to that of humans in withdrawal, tremors, extreme agitation, and obsessive return to the same consumption sites. It is not a metaphor. It is not an exaggeration. It is the most brutal demonstration that when a drug saturates a region so completely, it does not distinguish between species. Afghan opium did not just destroy a country. It poisoned its soil, its water, and even its animals. In 2016, President Rodrigo Duterte won the Philippine election with a simple and brutal promise: if you choose drugs, I will kill you. The drug in question was shabu, high-purity crystal methamphetamine that by that point had penetrated every social stratum of the archipelago. What followed was one of the most controversial episodes in recent history, an official campaign that left between 6,000 and 30,000 dead according to different sources, between police operations and extrajudicial executions. Distribution networks in the Philippines operate with terrifying efficiency from maximum security prisons where inmates themselves coordinate shipments. Shabu reaches the most remote neighborhoods in the country. Journalistic investigations discovered that distribution leaders continued to run their networks from cells, using smuggled phones. Its low price and high potency made it irresistible to low-income workers looking to work longer hours. What began as the poor man's energizer became a national epidemic. Duterte's war was won by no one, and Shabu is still circulating. Fentanyl is a synthetic opioid originally created for pain management in terminal cancer patients. It is between 50 and 100 times more potent than morphine. Mexican cartels, primarily Sinaloa and Jalisco Nueva Generación, don't just traffic it, they manufacture it. Using chemical precursors imported primarily from China, they set up laboratories capable of producing tons of fentanyl pressed into counterfeit pills stamped M30, visually identical to a prescription analgesic. The lethal difference: the distribution of fentanyl within each pill is uneven. One tablet may contain a harmless dose. The next one, from the same batch, may contain enough to kill 3 people. Users don't know this. They cannot know. The cartels perfected the most efficient business model in the history of drug trafficking: a substance manufactured in micrograms, transported in quantities invisible to censors, generating profit margins impossible to match with cocaine or heroin. The DEA estimates that Mexican fentanyl is responsible for the majority of the more than 70,000 annual overdose deaths in the United States. This is not a war on drugs. It is an industrial production line aimed north. Imagine someone gives you something to drink, or simply blows a powder near your face. Within minutes, you are still conscious, you can talk, you can walk, but you cannot say no. That is burundanga. Scopolamine of plant origin, derived from the borrachero tree, native to the Colombian Andes. Colombia has the world's most documented record of crimes committed with this substance. Victims under its effect have voluntarily handed over their bank card pins, emptied their own bank accounts, signed documents, and in extreme cases, handed over their home belongings believing they were doing so of their own free will. The Colombian Police Criminal Investigation Unit calls it the perfect drug for crime because the victim remembers nothing. There is no clear complaint, no description of the attacker. What sets it apart from every other drug on this list is that it is not consumed voluntarily. It is used as a weapon. The World Health Organization ranks Colombia as the country with the most reported cases of criminal scopolamine use in the world. And the most disturbing part, the tree that produces it grows in public gardens and parks in Bogotá, Medellín, and Cali. Completely visible. Completely legal. Kensington Avenue, Philadelphia. They call it the epicenter of the worst drug crisis in the history of the United States. But in recent years, something got even worse. To fentanyl, already deadly on its own, distributors began adding xylazine, a veterinary tranquilizer used to sedate horses and cattle. It has no approved human antidote. And there lies the problem. When someone suffers a pure fentanyl overdose, naloxone, known as Narcan, can reverse it. It saves lives in minutes. But xylazine does not respond to naloxone. People who consume tranq, as it is known on the street, can receive full doses of the antidote and still not respond. Additionally, xylazine causes severe skin wounds at injection sites, even in areas far from the vein. Sores that become infected, that deepen down to the bone, and that frequently end in amputations. Philadelphia paramedics described in reports the following situation: they arrive at an overdose, administer naloxone, the person does not respond, they administer more, and more. The person still does not wake up because the problem is no longer just the fentanyl. The fentanyl plus tranq combination was not designed by anyone. It emerged organically on the street as a consequence of mixing the cheapest with the most potent. The result, a drug with no known antidote, that destroys the body inside and out, and that the DEA has already classified as an emerging national security threat. This is, today, the most dangerous drug on the planet. 12 countries, 12 substances. A pattern that repeats itself everywhere. The most dangerous drug always emerges where there is the most despair. Paco in the Argentine slums. Oxy in the forgotten Amazon. Pervitin in the industrial cities of Eastern Europe. Shyrik in Afghan homes with no food. These are not just public health problems. They are the reflection of something that happens first: poverty, war, abandonment, inequality. Understanding this is not justifying consumption. It is the only way to truly begin to fight it. If this content impacted you, share it. Not to shock, but to inform. Knowledge is the only antidote that works against every drug on this list.